Hello and welcome, my partners in crime, and as always I say that in the nicest possible way. Okay, today's case. How can I say? It is a political case because it's about domestic terrorism in the 1970s to 1974, actually, to be precise. 1974, 75, 76 this case runs through, but this case goes on and on and on up until the 90s, really. Now this is a clear case here, and it's been proven that it's a clear case of a miscarriage of justice. Now it's called the Guildford Four for a reason, because the bombing of one of the bombings was in Guildford, and there was another one actually in Woolwich at the same sort of time, and this case was about that. It's also called the Maguire Seven because the Maguires were another family, and I think it was Jerry Connell's auntie who lived in London at the time. Now Jerry Connell, I'm telling you now, he was a nightmare really, a lovable rogue, could you say, in Northern Ireland, because this is where he came from. So I'm going to go sort of back to start with him, because we have to understand him, to understand how he is not fitting the profile of an IRA bomber here. And this is what this case is really all about. And the Somerset and Avon police, Surrey police. This is what it really comes down to. So Jerry was this young lad in Northern Ireland in this time of all the troubles in Northern Ireland. Now, as I've said to you before, I'm not political, and there's no way this is going to be a political thing, but I have to mention certain things within this. And so this is, I suppose, the case of the Guildford Four and the Maguire Seven. Now, Jerry was this, as I've said, he had, I think, two sisters, a mum and a dad, and his dad's name was Giuseppe, and the dad said that he was named Giuseppe because of the local ice cream parlour on the corner, and the mother liked the name. That's why he was called Giuseppe, but he was Irish, not Italian, as a lot of people sort of thought there was a mixture of the two. No, there wasn't. They was all Irish, and they all come from Northern Ireland, from Belfast. So, as he was, say 20, 19, 20s, up for teenager time, listen, he'd nick lead, he would take lead off the roofs. He was a petty thief. He was a lovable rogue, but he was a petty thief. And no IRA link was ever made to him. Because, let's be honest, any association, especially at that time when you're in Belfast, and the IRA really run Belfast at that time, especially, this area where he came from. He was too much trouble. He couldn't stop thieving. He was bringing attention to them. Now listen, the reason that Jerry left Ireland in the first place was because the IRA were actually going to kneecap him, shoot him in the knees, because he wouldn't stop thieving and bringing attention, especially to their safe houses in this area. They wanted him stopped. Now, it's a normal thing out there, it was at that time, a normal thing that they would rule, you did as you was told. Now, Jerry wouldn't conform. I think he had joined, when he was younger, the teenage version of that, the youth version. They threw him out because of this boy couldn't be controlled. He wouldn't do as he was told. Now, it's the Provisional Irish Republican Army. They're an army. They train like it. As with any army, they're only going to take you if they can control you, really, and you behave yourself and do as you're told. Jerry couldn't do that. So what Jerry's father did, because by this stage it's caused a lot of trouble in Belfast, it caused a lot of trouble for the IRA with their safe houses, because he was trying to steal some lead off the roof, him and his mate, and it caused, of course, the English soldiers then saw him, and he was messing about on top of the building with a stick, making it look like he had a gun, or not even that he thought he had a gun. But this is the mentality of Jerry at this time. No way was he, or he never even fit the bill as anything to do with the IRA. Actually, they wanted, as I've said, to shoot him in the knee, because if they shoot you in the knee, you ain't going anywhere. That means you're not going to cause them any trouble. You're not going to go and steal anymore. You're going to do as you're told. And his father saved him from that. And so his father then decided he needs to go to his aunts in London, the Maguires. Now he did go, and now on the way over actually he got on the boat, and the father saw him off on the boat, and he went on the boat, come over to England, as many people did, as my family did, and that not everyone left Ireland because of the troubles. They left because of the work. Irish usually seek out work. They like to travel. They will take a risk. The Irish, I've lived so many countries I can't tell you. It's in our blood if you're Irish, to go. But Jerry didn't really want to leave, you see, Belfast. But his father made him. Because if Jerry hadn't have left Belfast, the IRA would have killed him. And it turns out that him and his mate that were stealing this, lead and doing petty crimes and bringing attention to themselves, the boy that stayed was killed a few years later, or about a year and a half later, by the IRA, because he wouldn't stop. So Jerry's father, at the time, he thought he made the right decision by sending his child to England. So they got on the boat, he got on the boat on his own, the father waved him off, they all give him a bit of money, go and see your aunt, packed his suitcase, with the sausages and all this stuff, and that is true, that's what they did, and even now when I, come from mine, I'm still bringing stuff back and forward. That's how it was. That's why he was come to England. But when he was on the boat, he then met somebody else, someone he knew, and together then they thought, right, we'll start in England. And again, now Jerry was a bit of a drinker, he was on drugs, he loved the drugs, we're talking about the 70s. They decided now this man was going to go to a squat. So rather than going to his aunties, Jerry decides to go to the squat with this young man, and I don't know if I think it was Paddy, actually, the one he went with. I'm not sure which one it was. Now this squat in London, in the 70s, there's loads of squats in London, still is really. The house is empty, it's going to be moved into. And we always hear this, don't we? People come over to, especially London, thinking the streets are paved with gold. They're not. London is a very hard place to live. Even in the 70s, it's even worse now. So they've come to England, they've made it to England, they have popped and seen the aunt, and they said, we've got somewhere to stay, we're going to go and stay somewhere else. Because to tell you the truth, Irish women are not that easy to live with. They're really not. And this one was a very strict woman, the Maguires. She wouldn't have had drugs, she wouldn't have had any of that in her home. Typical Irish. Really, you do as you're told, and it doesn't matter if you're 20 or 50, you're still going to do as you're told, and especially by your aunt or something, they have a lot of respect, as they should, in any culture, to have respect for your elders. So Jerry couldn't stay with her really, because he wanted this life in London. He wanted this life, him and his mates that have come over from Ireland to London to party. So he's moved into this squat. There's a lot of people in this squat. They're all vegetarians in this squat. They are not vegetarians at all. They come from Ireland. You'd be lucky to be a vegetarian, really. Especially in my family, there's no way. There's no way. You're going to eat. Why aren't you eating? I can imagine my aunt saying it. Why aren't you eating? What's wrong with you? So they pretended to be vegetarians, right? So he was a lovable rogue, really. Yes, a petty thief. Yes, a drug. He used to take drugs, as many people did in the 70s, and as many more do today, actually, than then. And they got into this squat, and then they met some people in this squat, and he loved it. Jerry loved it. But he couldn't find any work, you see, because we had a lot of bombings going off now in London, because the IRA and that's why it's called domestic terrorism, because they wanted to make their point, and their point was, we're going to blow up your thing to make you realise that, listen, I'm only speaking, I don't know why they've done it, but, you can assume, can't you, why they've done it, but they did it. Now, this night, so there's been a lot of rows in this, let's go back to this squat, there's been a lot of rows in this squat, really, because you have one man in this squat, that until Jerry and his mates turned up, really, or his mate turned up, he was like the head man, you know, all the girls loved him. Now don't forget, it was free sex, it was free drugs, you know, they were living life, they were hippies, they loved life. And Jerry actually loved that sort of lifestyle. It suited him. He was quite happy here, apart from the lack of money and not being able to find work. Now, in London, when you've got bombs going off, and we did have a few bombs going off at that time, you know, before the Guildford and the Woolwich bombings, in this case, there was other bombs that had gone off, and the IRA were definitely at work here, and they've admitted everything they've done. And so, you know, I don't know why they think they're going to lie about these ones, because they've been honest from the beginning. I think then with Jerry, I think as things were going on, they couldn't find work. He didn't want to really go back to his auntie's because he knew he couldn't live his lifestyle he wanted. She wanted him to go and get a job, live a normal life. He wanted to party. And that was really what all of these wanted to do. Not the Maguires, the Guildford Four. They were just happy-go-lucky, petty criminals, really, on drugs, living in a squat, living life. Until the 5th of October, when this bomb went off in Guildford in 1974. And I think a few days after that, remember the man I said, the squatter, that sort of was the head man until Jerry and his friends come along, went to the police and said, they're Irish, they've done it. Now Jerry did say about his life in Ireland, in the squat, because Jerry and this man had lived it. They'd lived under the rule of the English. Now we don't know, because we didn't live that life. They were, I mean, they had the troubles in Northern Ireland must have been so stressful on these people to actually live in it, but they was born into it. So for Jerry to talk about the English, when he was talking about the English in a derogatory term, he wasn't talking about the English as a whole. He was talking about his experience with the English army, how he saw it from his perspective in Ireland. Now this young man who went to the police because he was a bit jealous, and I think it was jealousy over Jerry getting all the girls and stuff, and because he had a good personality, they loved him. He said to the police that he thinks these ones have done it. Now with the Guildford bombing and with the Woolwich bombing, there was a woman involved, and there actually was, and she was an Irish woman, she wasn't an English woman at all. She was a member of the IRA, and we know that because that's what they've said since then. So in this squat we have now, don't we, men and women. So by this stage though, by the time this man has reported Jerry's had enough of England. Now I'll tell you the reason why he really left England. Because one night, the night of that bombing on the 5th of October 1974, they was in a totally different part of London. And they were sitting on a bench, and along come a homeless man, and he sat on the bench, and he was Irish, and he said to them, you stay here, this is going to be your life. And he said, this is my bench, I've been here years. And he engraved his name or his initials onto the back of the bench. And I think Jerry thought then, I think the other one stayed because he didn't want to go back to Ireland at all. I think that was Paddy. He didn't want to go back, or was it Paul? One of them didn't want to go back. And actually I think neither of the other ones wanted to go back, and Carol Richardson anyway, she was an English girl. So Jerry then thinks, this isn't for me. I don't want to end up with my life, you know, on a bench. So he starts walking along, and they've got no money. He rings his dad and doesn't want to ask his dad for more money. He doesn't want to be seen as a failure to his dad. Now his dad asked him, do you need any money? No, we're fine. But as they finish the phone call and they're walking along the street, he sees a prostitute. Now in London we have very high class prostitutes, and this was a high class prostitute. And they was trying to joke around with her and talk to her, but she was getting into the car with a punter, but she dropped her door keys. So Jerry picks up the door keys after she's drove off, and he goes into her apartment or her flat in London, very high class flat, and he finds £700. Now £700 in this flat in 1974 was a lot of money. Now this is Jerry's, as Jerry thinks, his way out. So he buys himself all new clothes. Actually, it's just actually some of the stuff he brought was madness, because you wouldn't. I don't know how he even walked down the streets of Belfast dressed like that, but he did. And he said, you know what, this, is this a sign really? I'm going home, because he'd had enough. So the others said goodbye, and off he goes, and he goes home. So he never went home because he'd bombed anywhere. He went home because he'd robbed £700 from a high class prostitute. And at £700 in them days, and he took it home to his family. And I think at that point, he says he wanted to sort of change his life a little bit, but that was never going to happen. In the end, something would have happened to him with the IRA there if he had continued on. But he'd gone home, and all of a sudden, you see, because of this man from this squat had said to the police that it was him, or it's likely that it was them that did this bombing. The police then arrested him in Northern Ireland, brought him back to London, and started to interrogate him. Now the thing is, they'd already picked up, I think, Paddy Armstrong, Caroline Richardson and Paul Hill. He was the last one because he was in Northern Ireland. He was in Belfast. So he was then taken back. By the time that he had got in there, they'd already been questioning these other three for a very, very long time. Because in the 1970s, the law changed on Terrorism Act, where you could question someone for up to 7 days, really, and, just question them. You didn't have to have anything on them. The law is actually different today. It's actually worse. They can question you, I think, indefinitely now on terrorism charges. There's a lot of difference now. But given that now, we're not now with terrorism, you're not being investigated by a local police or the Surrey police. You're being investigated by the intelligence officers and people that work closely and have monitored you, had known you. We've got CCTVs, and I keep saying we didn't have this anywhere in London. London, you can't move in London without being on a CCTV. Every couple of seconds, you're on there. Really, if you can get hold of a CCTV, you could track everywhere I've been in a day. Face recognition, they've got a lot now. So it's a bit different now when they are arresting you now on terrorism, that and that they can arrest you on suspicion of terrorism. That's even if someone has said that you're a terrorist, you can be arrested on that, and they don't then have to release you until they're sure. Which, we've got a lot of issues here with terrorism, all over the world has, and any terrorism has to be dealt with. But again, we're not getting into political things here, we're talking about this case. So now, this is where it really starts, I think, for the Guildford Four. So, what they do, they each have them in each different room. They are being interrogated non-stop, 24 hours a day, for 7 days. Now think about that. Think about what you would do if you was being interrogated by people that really believe, or at first they really believe because of what this squatter had said, that you are an IRA bomber. You are now a political prisoner as far as they're concerned. So this is how it really started. And they could then question you and question you and question you, which is fair enough, isn't it really, when you think about it? But it's the coercion. It's the putting your gun in your mouth to make you say what you did. It's about threatening to kill your family. Now these are police officers saying this to these youngsters. It's about showing you pictures of the dead that you've meant to have killed. Now I think Carol Richardson couldn't handle that. Actually, Carol Richardson couldn't handle a lot of this. She was punched, hurt, gun put at her head. A 20-odd-year-old hippie, really. The girl's a bloody vegetarian, right? And the girl didn't have a clue about what was going on. They had drug issues. They were coming off of drugs as well. You know, they were taking a lot of stuff in this time, you know, hallucinogenics and everything else. They were coming off, they was having withdrawals. So now you've got all this going on. You have 3 or 4 people on at you 24/7 for 7 days. What would you do? Would you think, I'm going to sign now? Because I think that's all they did in the end, was sign. And I think Jerry actually said he signed it and write what you want, because by that stage they just wanted it over. They wanted this interrogation over. We can fight it later because we know we didn't do it. There's no evidence. They wrote the statements, or they signed the statements of what the police wanted them to say. And now they are told, most of these had alibis. I think all of them had alibis, but they were discounted. Now Jerry's alibi, and I think Paul's alibi, was on this bench talking to a homeless man on the other side of London at the time of this bombing. Now, this is how this case has come about to where it was really squashed, because that evidence was suppressed. That evidence, they knew this evidence, they knew after a month of this conviction that these 4 didn't do this crime. They knew it, but they suppressed the evidence. There was notes on it not to be shown to the defence, because that was their alibi. They were there, and of course the prostitute didn't come forward and say she had been robbed, because it was illegal, and she probably didn't care. She didn't. So he couldn't prove that he was on this bench, or he tried to. He told them exactly where it was. Exactly, he said there's a man's carved. I looked, he carved his initials into the back of the bench. He's a homeless man, he gave him their name. Well, they did find the man, but they didn't say. They never said. So they knowingly, and this is what's so wrong about this case. At first, when you're interrogating someone for 7 days and you believe that they are belonging to the IRA and they are a political now prisoner and they have done bombings, I can understand why you want them to get the information. But you know what I can't understand in this case, and which just makes this case one of the most tragic cases going really, is because these people actually knew that these people didn't do it. They'd been told. They did nothing. They actually hid the evidence to stop it coming out, to save face. You have put people in prison for life, and we'll go into that in a minute. But let's talk about the Maguire Seven. Now this is the auntie. Now they was done, arrested and charged for building bombs, explosives. That was what they was all done for, including the 14-year-old child. So I think it was the mother, the father, the mum, no, the auntie, the uncle, the brothers. There were some others involved. Then there was Giuseppe, which was Jerry's father, who only came over, really, because his son had been taken out of his bed in Northern Ireland, took to Surrey police station and charged with political crimes, and they couldn't believe it. So he came over to try and support his son. They arrested him too. So anyone in connection with this now, was arrested and finally charged with it and put in prison for a long time. Now, the Guildford Four, the judge said in this case that, we don't have hanging in this country anymore. But if he could have, he would have hung them for it, for what they did. That's what the judge said. Or he wanted to give them, if he could have done them for treason, which still in this country still holds the death penalty, actually in this country, treason. He wanted to give them that. But so what he wanted to do was give them long sentences, because the judge didn't know if when they come up for appeal that he would still be alive. So he gave them 30 years. Now these are innocent people. Can you imagine yourself in this dock? You know you haven't done this. You know every word that's coming out of this police's mouth, all of them, is a lie. And then you're handed a sentence of 30 years each. It's shocking really. So with the Maguires, they were arrested and charged for making the bombs. in their home. All of them, including her 14-year-old son, the youngest one. They were all given sentences, quite long sentences. I think not one of them serves less than, I think, 12 years or so. But, it's really difficult to explain this case because it's a shocking case. Because as these people are sitting rotting in prison, and that's what was happening to them because they're political prisoners. Now there is a movie out, and it's a really great movie actually. I think it's called I've talked about something about my father, and it shows that Jerry and Giuseppe were in the same cell in the prison, and that's untrue. There's no way that a prison is going to allow that. Prisons are about, what they say, they're about reforming you, but not for political prisoners. They're about, punishment. And so Jerry's father was sentenced, I think, for 12 years, and he was a very ill man actually, even at that time when he was sentenced. And again, don't forget, for something he actually didn't do, and he had absolutely no connection at all to the IRA. Then you had Jerry, and I think he got 30 years, and he was in a different cell, same prison, different cell. So no, the movie is I think it is factual. There's a lot in it which is factual, but of course, if they actually done a movie on actually how it was in prison, and that movie only depicts really Jerry and Giuseppe's experience in prison. It doesn't actually show you much about Paddy and Paul and Caroline's experience in prison, which would have been awful. It was awful. I think Caroline was so distraught anyway at this sentence that she couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe it. And then to be put into a prison with as a political prisoner, and say you're an A-class category prisoner now, you're put in there. They're lucky they even survived. And actually Giuseppe didn't. He died, I think, 5-something years, maybe a bit more into his sentence. He died. But that was the bit that was it's not untrue, but they just made it up for movie value in that movie. So with these Maguires, let's get back to these. Now, the aunt, the uncle, the brothers, her sons, very young, all of them, I think all of them got 12 years. They've all got long sentences. Long sentences. And again, it's for something they didn't do. Now, I think there's lots of books, they wrote lots of books on this, and good for them as well to release out their experiences. I can't tell you how it would have been to be charged with something and then prosecuted for something like this that you haven't done at all. And we talk about many miscarriages of justice, don't we? But I think how it ended with this, how it actually came about, was there was a lawyer, and she was helping, and the family had never stopped fighting. Actually, they'd never stopped fighting because you had, I think, 5 years into the sentence, an IRA bomber actually coming into the prison for other bombings that he's done. Quite honestly, telling these people, well, no, you can put me down for the Guildford and you can put me down for the Woolwich bombings because I did them as well. Now, he classed himself as a soldier. He was doing as he was told. He had no reason to lie, this man. He never did. He didn't lie. I mean, it's cold as ice, to tell the truth, this man. But he was honest because they are political. And if they do it and get caught for it, there's danger. I mean, people, listen, even today, in this case, people are in prison from the IRA that done these bombings, but no one has ever been charged with it because they're already doing life sentences for something else, right? They're already doing it. So this case was, what annoys me, I think, about miscarriages of justice, is because you've got 5 victims here, and I think one more from the Woolwich bombings. 5 victims, blown to pieces. Blown to pieces. No one has ever been charged with it. No one. Because they're already doing life sentences, even though they admitted it. Then you had the Good Friday Agreement and all this sort of stuff. But no one's ever been charged. Nothing. And so, and why you are then looking at, with miscarriages of justice, these victims, like the Guildford Four or like the, Maguire Seven, you've arrested innocent people. You've interrogated them. You've coerced them in the most terrible way, by putting guns to their head, threatening their family. I mean, you're meant to, you're meant to be the law, or representing the law as police officers. But you've took people off the street, innocent people off the street, and after that there's still more bombings. Because you didn't do your job. You thought you did. All you wanted, and I think this is what annoys me with these police, especially at this time, all they ever wanted was, oh, another one got that, in the press, we've got them. No, you didn't get them. You didn't get them. Didn't get anyone. Didn't investigate really anything. You took a word of a drug addict, a hippie, in a communal sort of squat, who was jealous of people, and then you made up a story about these people. Now, and then you had the evidence and you hid it. And this lawyer, in the end, I mean, listen, to try and get these people out, to even try and get an appeal, it was knocked back and it was knocked back and knocked back, because they didn't want to be known as wrong. Even though at this point, even though they knew that these people hadn't done this crime, they still would not allow them an appeal or even to get out. They couldn't have it being known that this was one of the biggest messed up cases going, probably in bloody history. When you really read into this case, it's a bloody shocking case. And if these sort of people, these police officers, who, by the way, and I'll say it now, was took to court, because it gross, what was it they was charged with? I think they was charged with gross misconduct, this, that and the other. They was proven innocent. Now, they was proven innocent after all they did to hide evidence, to keep it away from the defence, to have statements from the IRA, from Pacific bombers, who's told you in interview, well, I done that. They charged him for the other bombings, but didn't put that on his charge, knowing that all these people were innocent. We have a forensic testing scientist in this 1975 that said he was testing the Marigold gloves. I mean, it's proven that was absolutely false. These people did nothing wrong. This is what annoys me about this case. They did absolutely nothing wrong at all. And the police got away with it. The government got away with it, really. I think Tony Blair in 1995 apologised, this, that and the other. I mean, he wasn't in Bing up until then. But what do we expect from our police? Different these days, I suppose, with terrorism. It's different. But it does make me think, when we have these miscarriages of justice, when you have people like these individuals, these about 5 or 6 police officers it was at the time, investigators they call themselves, detectives and stuff. Well, detectives, to hide evidence. They should have gone to prison themselves for holding it. You took away the liberty of so many people for so many years. I'm ranting a bit. It just annoys me. It really does. So anyway, the case was then held because this lawyer then found out, after a tremendous hassle to try and get any information out of the files, out of the archives on this case, and by accident she was given Jerry's file, and in that file there was the suppressed evidence and had on it not to be shown to the defence. So then they went back to court on this, and that then on that day they was literally it was found to be unsafe, and it took many weeks then for others then to be released out and stuff, and it took many years, I think 12 years, for just Giuseppe's name to be cleared of anything. So listen, this is a Guildford Four case. It's a shocking case, isn't it? And the Maguire Seven. Watch the movie, and I'm just going to go into a little bit about what happened after, because this really affected these people's lives. Being in prison is one thing, the stress and it's hard to be in prison for a crime you've done. But how hard is it to be in there, to be sentenced to something that you haven't done? You know you're innocent. Actually, they even knew you was innocent. They didn't care. Now, I think in February 1977, during the trial, right, I think it was at Balcombe Street, ASU, the 4 IRA men, they instructed their lawyers to draw attention to the fact that the 4 were totally innocent people and were serving massive sentences, and they were referring to the Guildford Four. But again, no one would listen. No one. So they did try. Even the IRA tried to say, hang on, you've got the wrong people. Even when they're in an interview, even when they're being charged with something, they're still saying, well, we did that. No, you didn't. They wouldn't have it. Even though the evidence was there. And the young girl that was in the car that they said was Carol Richardson, this English girl, the only English one actually that was charged in the Guildford Four. All the others were Irish. But she even said, because they knew there was a girl present. The Irish girl who done the bombings, they said they knew it wasn't her. Nothing to do with her at all. These poor people, this poor girl, really terrible. So as with this evidence, I think it was in 1989 that the detectives of Avon and Somerset Constabulary, or the police investigating, was handling this case, was found really significant piece of evidence that they had wrote out the statements themselves. Some were typed, some were wrote out. There was typed notes from Patrick Armstrong, and the police interview had been and it had been edited. Now listen, if you're going to give a statement, right, you write it yourself. You can't edit it. If you edit it, you have to sign every bit. I mean, it's extensively edited. All this stuff, all this evidence that they tried to put forward was absolutely falsified, because of course there was editing in this statement, because the man was innocent. And because then, Patrick Armstrong, this or Paddy Armstrong, you want to call him, was having a gun in his head or his mouth to tell the truth. He said anything. And this is why the stories don't match up. Because when you're put under duress like that, when you're trying to make someone do something, it can never be the truth. And it will always come out in the end, if someone is looking. And it happened that this lawyer was looking. So the four, which were Jerry, Paddy, Caroline and Paul, were all released on the 19th of October 1989, after having their convictions squashed, because of now all this evidence, and all the suppressed evidence was now allowed in, which proved right from the beginning they were innocent. Paul Hill had also been convicted of a murder of a British soldier, Brian Shaw, and it was based on this. Why Paul was in there for the Guildford ones. They also really made him say that he had killed Brian Shaw, and that was why he was in the same custody at the same time with the Surrey police. So they also got him on that murder, something he didn't do. So this British soldier, Brian Shaw's killer, has never been found, because again, they went for the wrong one. Now, I know a lot of people and still believe that all of these are guilty. All right, you do. I know that because I read a lot. And they're not. But I think the police done such a good job, didn't they, to convince people that they'd done it. And they really didn't. And they done such a good job to say they were linked to the IRA, but they wasn't. Not at all. None of them. And then I think Paul was tried, and I think he's even spoke to Brian Shaw's brother, but he won't have it. He still believes that he done it. Now, that's his right to think that he's lost his brother, and I think the evidence and the way that this case was put across in court, people believed it. People believed it because the minute you start suppressing evidence and you have a good, as I said, prosecutor that's going to tell you this story that you're going to believe, it's hard then to out of their mind, and you're talking 16 years later when these people are released out. That's all they know, isn't it, about what they've heard, really. That whether you're innocent or guilty is still conflicting because the police weren't convicted of anything, were they, in this case? Of course they weren't. They got off. So then you're telling people, well, did they do it or not? Did the police actually set these people up or not? Because they weren't convicted for it. Nothing happened to them. And I think this is the perception of what's happening out there with a lot of these cases, is when officers are not charged and prosecuted for doing such terrible behaviour, to intimidate someone, to put a gun in someone's mouth, to terrorise, to interrogate for hours and hours and hours, to make false statements up. And then you release it out and these people go to prison, everyone's cheering because yes, they've gone to prison, you've got them, you've publicised it, we've got them. That's it. It's difficult for people to believe down the line that that's untrue. So I know there's a lot of people out there that still believe that this was wrong. They actually did it. And I think when you look at the police, that they still continue to try and get them for something. I mean, these people were paid out in the end about 500,000, I think, something like that. I think Jerry got, I don't know really, they're not allowed to really say, but it's thought it was about that. But he spent 16 years in prison, of hard time in prison. Now this group, that I said, IRA sort of cell that said that they had done it, I think under the Good Friday Agreement they was released out, but they were already serving life sentences, but they were released out under the terms of the Good Friday Agreement. 3 British police officers, I think it was Thomas Stiles, their names were, John Donaldson and Fernan Atwell, were charged with conspiracy to pervert the course of justice. These are the ones that put all these people in prison for a very long time, but each was found not guilty. So they were the names of them. Again, I think on 9th of February 2005, Tony Blair, the Prime Minister at the time, issued an apology to the families of all the 11 people involved in this. So that was the end of it as far as our government was concerned. Now Anne Maguire, she was the aunt who served time in prison, and she was awarded a medal, I think, from the Roman Catholic Church for her remarkable ability to forgive. She forgave them, and also then she worked in her community to try and help rebuild the community there. In 1993, Paul Hill married Courtney Kennedy, a daughter of the assassinated American president or American senator Robert F. Kennedy, and she was the niece of the assassinated president John F. Kennedy. I think they had a daughter in 1999, but legally separated in 2006. Their daughter died at the age, died in August 2019, I think, and she was 22 years old. So then we have Gary's autobiography. It's called Proved Innocent, and that was adapted and into this movie, which was an Oscar and BAFTA award nominated in 1993, and it's in the name of the father. I'll put some links up as well with this. And that had Daniel Day-Lewis and Emma Thompson in that as well. Very, very good movie. But again, it's there's a lot of facts. It's a great movie. You should watch it. But they never shared this cell. So remember that part as you're looking through this. But it sort of depicts his early life and coming over and really, how bad this really was. Now Sarah, Jerry's mother, and Giuseppe's wife, and she spent 16 years campaigning to have the names of her husband and son cleared and helped secure an apology, and she died on the 20th of July 2008. Paddy Armstrong had problems with drinking and gambling, and he eventually married and moved to Dublin. Carol Richardson, it's very sad for her. She married and had a daughter soon after being released. Now she kept well out of the public eye really, because this girl had a terrible time in prison. Really, she did. and she died in 2012 at the age of 55. Gary then, when he was released, he went back to Belfast and he died in his home on the 21st of June 2014. Now his family issued a statement at that time, and they said he brought life and love and intelligence, wit and strength to our family, though through these darkest hours. Now, you know, even for all this challenges all these people had to meet, should never have happened. They died very young, these people. Some are still going, but poor Caroline, she suffered terribly, I think, and to die at 55, meaning she spent probably 16 years of her life out of her 55 years locked up for a crime she didn't do. So listen, this has been the Guildford Four. I hope you found this case interesting. I know I've rambled a bit, and I know I get very passionate about miscarriages of justice, but this is so bad, isn't it? This case, really, it's embarrassing, I think. You know, when you really think about it, about what we've done to people. You know, I think when we look at this case, we have to look at the total of it, don't we? The lives affected, the things that really happens. You know, yes, you can watch the movie and you're gonna see what it is, but to live it, imagine being one of these people. Now listen, if this girl, Caroline Richardson, hadn't have been English, you could have said, couldn't you, that the Irish were persecuted, really. It's because they were Irish, and really when you look at it, the majority of these people, apart from one, was Irish. So what are they trying to say in them days? Anyone Irish is a member of the IRA. Anyone Irish, whether you're coming over to England to set up a new life, to find work, you know, is a terrorist. It's madness. So you know what to do. Thumbs up if you liked it. You know, hit the subscribe button. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Spotify. So this will be on Spotify at some point. Leave me comments and let me know what you think. But I know, listen, I'm not political, so don't leave me any political questions, because I'm just not going to answer them. I'll tell you that straight now. This is about miscarriages of justice. This is what this case is really about. And that's all it can be about. So thanks for watching. Until the next time. Bye bye.